This lesson will identify the importance of load factor and energy state in maintaining the aircraft flight path. Energy management and other aspects of flight monitoring allow pilots to make necessary adjustments and correct potential upset conditions. Recognizing and monitoring helps pilots detect and prevent potentially dangerous upsets and stalls. The following objectives will be covered during this lesson. Identify the aerodynamic factors which could lead a pilot to provide inappropriate flight control inputs shortly following an auto-flight disconnect. Describe the importance of energy management in maintaining safe flight and avoiding upset or stall conditions. Indicate the manner in which crew awareness and resource management can lead to earlier detection and quicker response to upset and stall conditions. After the examination of case studies and the causes and contributing factors to accidents, the importance of operating within the aircraft's flight envelope should be clearly understood. Flight path management is accomplished by managing energy, a function of adding only the energy required to offset the energy lost due to drag components and routing the energy in the appropriate direction. Load factor is a very simple equation with a very profound effect. Load factor equals lift divided by weight. Terms often used for load factor are G-load and G-loading, where G refers to the apparent acceleration of gravity felt by aircraft occupants. If an aircraft is in unaccelerated, straight, and level flight, the wing is producing the same upward vertical force, lift, as the vertically downward force of gross weight and gravity. Where lift equals weight, the load factor is 1. And the aircraft is in equilibrium. As soon as any control input is made, load factor will change. In the UPRT aerodynamics training module, the change in weight was shown to not change the angle of attack, AOA, at which the wing stalls, but does change the speed at which a stall will occur. The AOA was also shown to remain the same regardless of altitude. However, the true airspeed where the stall occurs increases with an increase in altitude due to lower air density. This indicated airspeed to load factor graph illustrates that a stall can also occur by negative G-loading. Even upside down, a wing is still a wing. There are many reasons a negative stall is difficult to achieve, but the dominant reason is that in commercial air transportation, aircraft are not placed into situations which are conducive to the development of a negative stall. A likely setup for a negative stall would be an outside loop. Consider that until structural integrity is at risk, the negative stall of a wing requires the transition through greater G-loading to achieve stall than is necessary for a positive stall, as shown in the graph above. Compare the vertical distance from the blue 1G line to both stall curves. Lateral G-loading is complex in that it acts on all three aircraft axes, and the sweep of a wing adds to the complexity. In 2013, a military B-720, B-707, crashed as a result of a Dutch roll. The diagrams above were included in the accident investigation report. When following the diagram of airframe gyrations, the yaw is shown to create asymmetric lift, which creates asymmetric induced drag, resulting in rotation about the longitudinal axis. This then brings the other wing more directly into the relative wind with its resulting increase in lift, and the cycle repeats. In time, and without recovery input, the amplitude of the repeating cycle increases to the point of total loss of control in flight, LOCI. The good news is that yaw damper systems have all but eliminated Dutch roll. However, lateral loading issues could still occur if those systems fail, or if the pilots induce side slip. The chart above shows that a small increase in G-loading creates a significant increase in stall speed. In the three case studies previously shown, all three controlling pilots, PFs, made pitch-up inputs as soon as the autopilots disconnected. This could suggest that when many pilots are surprised with or startled by an unexpected autopilot disconnect event, a likely result may be an unexplainable pullback on the control yoke or stick. When this occurs, load factor increases and stall speed increases. As altitude increases, stall speed increases as well. Even with artificial control field protocols, the moderate control inputs used by pilots to effect change at low altitude would be excessive at higher altitudes, which can quickly lead to an undesired aircraft state. Upset prevention sometimes requires waiting. Often when autopilot disconnects, there is no immediate change to the flight path because the position of the horizontal stabilizer is continually being updated. Unless there is a sudden dynamic change in aircraft attitude, taking manual control after an autopilot disconnect at any altitude should be a gentle and very considered event. In some cases, active monitoring could be used to determine if an out-of-trim condition exists before manually disconnecting the autopilot, in which case a firm hand on the control yoke or stick becomes desirable. Recall from previous case studies that situations exist where a pilot making a moderate pull on the controls could create a deadly aircraft upset. For flight management purposes, energy is provided by three sources: chemical, kinetic, and potential. Aside from planning and pre-flight, nothing in aviation operationally occurs until fuel is mixed with air and ignited. Engines turn chemical energy, fuel, into kinetic, mechanical energy, or movement. First the engine, then the aircraft. After the aircraft lifts off the runway, potential energy is accumulated and stored by the aircraft as the result of climbing. When an aircraft has departed the normal flight envelope, potential energy from altitude may initially be the only energy useful to a pilot in recovering to a desired aircraft state. Threat and Error Management, TEM, identifies and uses active monitoring as a tool to support safe flight. The UPRT app defines active monitoring as a proactive, knowledge-driven process of encountering and keeping track of how things are in relation to the perceiver and their expectations to enable the perceiver to take meaningful action. Active monitoring involves proactively seeking relevant information, making important information available, filtering meaningless information, creating new information, and offloading cognitive processing onto the interface or adapting the interface to support monitoring. Please note, active monitoring is clearly not the sole responsibility of the pilot monitoring. The Flight Safety Foundation has published a practical guide for improving flight path monitoring. It is the final report of the Active Pilot Monitoring Work Group and contains input from the Line Operations Safety Assessments, LOSA. Additionally, IATA has prepared clear and thorough guidance material for improving flight crew monitoring. Functions of active monitoring start with understanding the expected aircraft state for the current situation, which is specific to the current phase of flight. Communicate expectations and keep mentally updating the actual aircraft state. The aircraft state is different when climbing through 30,000 feet than it is while climbing through 5,000 feet. Detect and immediately communicate any deviation from expectations. Assess risks and select appropriate responses. Update and communicate understanding as appropriate. Apply timely corrective actions. This diagram allows for review of some basic flight dynamics principles. Flight path deviations usually start with a single parameter gone awry. This often occurs when temporary adjustments to the flight path are needed, as in weather deviations. A heading mode is selected to replace LNAV for maneuvering. After deviation is no longer required with a desired course intercept heading, if the pilot flying does not arm LNAV, the desired flight path will not be resumed. If speed was adjusted to turbulent penetration speed and the filed or cleared airspeed is not resumed, the required flight path may be intercepted, but the required aircraft state has not been resumed. Training includes procedures to recover from upset conditions. The first two items are to disconnect the autopilot and auto throttles. If the auto-flight features are not compromised, the best course of action to prevent an upset from occurring is often to use active monitoring and control over the auto-flight parameters to resume the desired aircraft state. This course has already examined many causes and contributing factors to deviations from the desired aircraft state. One widely recurring threat to the desired state is in failing to complete procedures which have been initiated. When given clearance to climb with a minimum climb rate, active monitoring is especially important. If airspeed decay occurs unnoticed, appropriate corrective action might not be taken. On a continuing basis, the greatest hazard to the flight path is the flight deck crew. Understand that proper active monitoring has the greatest effect on the biggest problem related to aircraft upsets by finding and managing issues before they become startling events. In summary, this lesson identified the aerodynamic factors which could lead to pilots providing inappropriate flight control inputs following an autopilot disconnect. The lesson also showed the importance of energy management in maintaining the aircraft's flight path and for avoidance of upsets and stall conditions. The appropriate management of crew resources and other sources was also shown. Next, let's answer some questions.